Very nice, Mark.
Yeah, Voyager arriving home.
Yeah, Voyager
Very
arriving
nice.
home.
Very
Good
nice.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Happy Sunday to everybody in the Star Trek family. So happy that you've joined us for another Voyager 30 event celebrating the wonderful 30th anniversary of our favorite Star Trek, right?
I have a favor to ask of you, Mark.
Sure.
Will you keep an eye on the chat while we're watching the show? Because sometimes people leave their mics on during the show and it creates an echo, and people put it in the chat and you don't see it right away.
Yeah, well, I was actually away from the computer when you mentioned that earlier, and I ran right
Oh,
upstairs and took care of it. So I apologize for that.
okay.
But yes, during the actual episode watch, we should keep all of our microphones muted. But thank you for letting me
Thank
know. I
you.
appreciate it. And so happy to see so many smiling faces today. We get to watch arguably one of the best episodes of Voyager, Counterpoint, and we're going to be discussing that afterwards. But before we start the episode watch, I want to remind everybody that throughout the month of January, in conjunction with our Voyager 30 celebration, we are raising money for charity for a nonprofit out of LA called the Hollywood Food Coalition, which is run by John Billingsley. And they feed and clothe the homeless population in Los Angeles County. So it's a wonderful cause. We invite you to please consider donating any amount you can to that. There's a link and a QR code in chat that you can use to make that donation. And if you make any donation today, before we finish our final event of the day, you will also be entered into a drawing that we're doing for a free prize that we're giving away. It's the collector's edition Star Trek Voyager, the official magazine, issue number 15, which has a lot of really great behind the scenes information and some great posters of all the crew. So if you make any donation today, any amount, your name will go into a hat. At the end of the evening, we will draw a name and we will let the winner know that they've won this beautiful mint condition magazine. So we thank you for all of your generosity and hope that you'll join us for our last event of the evening as well, which we'll talk about later. So, how's everybody doing? Happy Voyager 30 to you.
Pretty good.
Happy Voyager 30.
Good.
Jay, good to see you, Jay.
Jay, who is, I think this is your first time joining us. No, you've been with us before.
I'm on Zoom, and Lisa, I am so happy to see you smiling. I've been so worried about you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. She's feeling a lot better, and the anti-seizure medication is helping considerably. So here's hoping, it was isolated.
Love you guys.
All right. For those of you that haven't been with us for a while or haven't joined a watch party in a while, we do them regularly on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights at 7:00 p.m. Right now, we're watching Deep Space Nine and the original series, respectively. And typically, we do one on Saturday as well. But because of Voyager 30, we're not doing any Saturday watch parties for our normal watch party schedule. Tonight or today, right now, we're going to watch Counterpoint. I will stream the episode directly through the Zoom, and we ask that you turn off your cameras and mute your microphones for streaming bandwidth to make it easy. Feel free to talk about the episode as we're watching in chat, and then after we're done watching, we will come back and have a really cool discussion. So we'll go ahead and get this started for you.
Mark, which season and episode number is it?
That is a very, very good question. It is season 5, episode 10. Season 5, episode 10.
Kate's favorite episode.
It's one of my favorite episodes. I love it. It's
It's
so cerebral. I love it. All right. This episode is about 46 minutes long. So sit back and enjoy, and we will see you afterwards for conversation.
No, that was fun.
All right. Welcome back, Star Trek family. That was, I see you. That was an incredible episode. It's such a dance of the way that they're playing off of each other. And I can say it 100 times. It's one of my favorite episodes. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the episode. So if you'd like to join in on the conversation, raise your hand either physically on camera or use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, wherein there is another button that says raise hand. You can raise and lower your hand. So I will call you in turn. Lisa, you had your hand up first. Go right ahead.
I loved it. I loved especially the ending, how awesome that we tricked that idiot.
The character, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm
character
talking
really well.
about the characters. I'm talking about the episode.
You really didn't like that guy.
And after this, I loved it.
But I mean, you didn't like Kashyyyk. You thought he was a really bad. He was a bad guy, but like you didn't like.
He was a bad guy. Yeah. Well, but you know what? He is a good actor, because at one point I actually believed that he had turned around.
Yeah.
And
you thought that his affection for Janeway was real, and
not his affection for Janeway, but the fact that he wanted to
defect.
Defect.
Yeah.
I truly thought that he really wanted to defect
Okay.
until the end, and then when she turned the thing around,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
and when the telepath were able to, I was like, yes.
She liked that part.
Yes.
Let me go to Denny. Denny, hello.
So we have the telepaths. I thought it was cool that they were able to suspend them in the transporter, and that they actually added in once the doctor was examining them that they had done it a few too many times, and that they're risking killing off some of them accidentally if they keep suspending them in the transporter system like that. And then the last time we were on Zoom, we were kind of talking about how many shuttles do they actually go through, because the shuttle bay is only so big. Chalk up 2 more, so that's where 2 of them go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring that up, because it was in one of the research points that I found when I was going through the production aspect of this episode. They do lose the 2 shuttles in this episode, meaning that to this point, mid 5th season, they have now lost 9 total shuttles. So that's an interesting point.
Tupac, though,
He is.
so where was he? Where did he hide?
Well, the first couple times he was in the transporter.
Yes, but
where did he go the last time?
exactly.
Yeah.
Where did he go?
Good
Does
question.
anybody know?
Anybody catch that? Where did Tuvok go the last time?
Because when I looked, I was like, yes, go. And then I was like, no, wait, Tupac is there. No.
He could have been in a
Yeah.
Jeffries tube,
Probably.
because they
would
do
be able to-
have shielded Jeffries tubes, so he could have been in one of the tubes hiding from wherever.
But they would have
You
scanned
don't-
her.
Yeah, what
You
is this?
don't know.
Sensor caught it?
Well, I mean, he knew where she was hiding them, so maybe she chose one that he had mentioned that they weren't going to look at
I don't know.
and hid there.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Oh,
Mercedes, do you have any ideas about that?
No, but I want to bring up something else.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm still eating. So
Bon appetit.
I do love that Suitor was mentioned, because he had a heroic end a couple seasons
Yeah.
ago. But I'm disappointed that there was a missed opportunity to bring up Kes, who is also a
Mhm.
telepath.
Yeah.
So you know how I'm always going about Kes is, she needs more attention. So I think that was missed.
That's a very valid point. And actually, there was another crew member that was missed, which we didn't see very much of because she died during Caretaker, during the pilot. It was Lieutenant Stoddy, who was the Betazoid, who was the original pilot of the ship, the one who was transporting Tom Paris to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
She was the Betazoid, and she wasn't mentioned either. So it's quite interesting that you bring that up. Cass is a glaring hole there. Joshua. Hi, Joshua. We haven't seen you in a long time. Good to see you.
Yeah, they kind of use the same technique as Scotty used in Relics.
Yeah, the same transporter technique as Scotty did in the Next Generation episode Relics, where they suspended them in the transporter buffer. Yeah, that's a good point.
Of course, Scotty had more time to kind of perfect it. To over 75 years, there was only like 0.8% degradation.
Well, for him, not for his compatriot who went into the transporter as well. But yeah, he used the transporters on the Janolan on the outside of the Dyson sphere, if you remember, and did the exact same thing. So it's really cool that they used the same technique, and I never thought about that. Awesome point. Risa, Malcolm.
Yeah, hi. I just think this was such a great episode. It really, really was. So well written. And yeah, I think he really had everybody fooled in the beginning, when he came on board asking for asylum and that. And I love the way Janeway counterpointed with her deception on him in the end. It was really brilliant. It really was. And so I did have one question though, because they're losing all of these shuttles. Can they replicate another shuttle, and maybe they just continue to replicate the missing?
Presumably, yes. Presumably, they could replicate the parts needed to create a new shuttlecraft. I mean, we see Tom Paris do it when he builds the Delta Flyer. But I imagine
the car that he had.
I imagine it takes a lot of manpower and resources, energy resources, to run the transporter for something that industrial in nature. So I almost want to say that it's impractical to continually rebuild. I mean, they would have had to have rebuilt 9 shuttles by this point, right? Or 7 shuttles by this point, and then 2 more after this episode. That's a lot.
Doesn't he use one in that race?
No, they use the Delta Flyer in the race.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that he replicates all the parts for that car that 1960 whatever car that he built, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, thankfully in Prodigy, we see this new technology called the vehicle construction. I forget what it's called, but they use it to like create shuttlecraft and stuff really easily and quickly, and which is really neat. Yeah, but at the time of Voyager, we haven't seen that yet, so it would be labor intensive and time intensive to recreate a shuttlecraft.
Yeah,
but it's doable.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about like yesterday when they picked up Neelix at that junkyard? Maybe if you picked up enough pieces, you wouldn't have to replicate as much. Just
sure.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And Neelix being the sort of, I call him a pack rat, but the trader that he was, I mean, he would have known all of the places locally that they could go and acquire parts instead of having to replicate everything. So that's also a good point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm. I think they're still at the point where like Neelix hasn't gone past his point of knowledge yet. I think that's coming up in season 5. So, yeah.
Well, it took him 5 seasons to be able to shine.
What?
You said he hasn't passed the point of.
Yeah, so Neelix only has knowledge of the Delta Quadrant up to a certain point.
Right.
The closer the Voyager gets to the Alpha Quadrant, he's actually going to move beyond what he knows about the space. So he's not going to know any of the planets and aliens and spatial phenomena and all that stuff.
So it took him 5 years.
So it's either 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But sure.
He does say something about that when we get to.
Yeah. Denny, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to put some more information out about what they were saying about how you were asking how they reconstructed those shuttles and everything. It was mentioned in one episode that they have to fabricate most of it. So what I imagine is that they're able to replicate panels to a certain degree, but then they still have to fabricate they still have to go and hand shape it and put it all together and get all the components working and aligned and everything. So it's not that they're basically building it from scratch. So there was the episode a year of hell or whatever. They mentioned something about they can't fabricate the parts because they don't have time anymore because they're just constantly getting hammered and hammered and hammered and hammered and hammered. So whenever they have all their downtime, that's pretty much all engineers are doing. They're literally just sitting in the cargo bay fabricating all the parts that they need, all the spare parts and everything that they're running through, because they don't have any. They can't go to a Starblade base and just resupply. And that's why it's so important for them to hit up all those planets. They really don't say in the show that they're picking up all these spare parts and metals and everything so they can run it through a fabrication replicator. But that's basically what's going on. They're not just getting food supplies and seeds or whatever. They're getting base materials and everything. Because don't forget that even though they do have the replicators don't run off the energy system. There's stuff in the cargo bay that is used to replicate. Those proteins are in a barrel somewhere, and they're pulled into the replicator system and reconstituted. So it's not held in the system. That's what the cargo bay is for. They're storing all those materials there, and that's why you see all these crates and boxes and all that stuff, because those raw materials are there. You can just get a big old cube of aluminum from somewhere, and you need a little aluminum tube, bam, fabricated, and it just ticks off one little piece of the base material that you have there. So,
yeah, excellent point. And we see episodes throughout Voyager where they stop at a planet, and we see our crew haggling with somebody on the planet, trying to get this part or that part or this, deuterium or whatever the case is, but they're trying to get these extra things to help them in that regard, so they can either rebuild stuff or power their ship for the long haul. So yeah, it's an excellent point. Astra puts in chat, this is going back to the question about where Tuvok was on the last Devore inspection. She Googled it, and it says Tuvok is at his station on the bridge when the Devore warships intercept Voyager at the end of the episode, and although presumably visible to Prax through the view screen when they establish communications, he is not noticed by Prax. True. The question is when the inspection teams come aboard, where does Tuvok go? Because he's obviously not there, or he would have been found by the inspection teams. Thank you for looking that up, though. I appreciate it, Astro. Mona. Hello, Mona.
I figured Tuvok is away doing one of the things that they do to trick the Devore. But Denny mentioned you're in hell or you're of hell. I don't remember which word the year in hell or year of hell. Those are my favorite episodes of Voyager because of the shocking ending.
Sure.
It was so shocking. I did not expect it at all. Those are mine. And I got to go back to the kitchen because I got food cooking.
Oh, awesome. Hey, just so you know, we're doing a watch party of Year of Hell parts 1 and 2 next Friday on the 10th. And also the main guest actor in that, Kurt, oh Lord, I just lost his name.
Kurtwood?
Yes, thank you. He is going to be on a live Q&A on Saturday. So along with Mark Harrelick from this episode.
Very good.
Wow.
I think
Josh, did you want to chime in?
Been using the same kind of one of those Thoron generators. Like Suda was when the Kazon had taken the ship. Tuvok could have been using the Thoron generator to trick their sensors.
Oh, the technology they got from them using that to mask him, you mean?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
That's a good thought.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that easily. I'm not real sure that that's as a plausible an explanation as any because I'm just not sure about it. But cool. What do you guys think about this? So really, this episode revolves around two people in specific. It revolves around Kate Mulgrew's Janeway and Mark Harrelick's Kashyyyk. And there's this sort of point counterpoint waltz sort of relationship between the two. Obviously, Kashyyyk comes off as this really bad guy. In fact, this whole episode was supposed to be an allegory for the Diary of Anne Frank. Okay, so in this case, Kashyyyk is sort of metaphorical for Nazi search parties looking for the Jewish Anne Frank. So he comes off as a bad guy. We know he's a bad guy. Then he shows up at Janeway's door alone, trying to defect. And right off the bat, you can see that there's mistrust on Janeway's part. But slowly but surely, the needle starts to move. What do you guys think about that whole relationship and the sort of romance that's brewing between the two?
I think that Kate Mulgrew's Janeway is better at that dissection than he was. Period.
Okay. I think so too. I mean, Lisa was saying that Kashyyyk had started to convince her that he really wanted to defect. But I think I agree with you. Janeway really kept her cards under her vest. And whether or not there was a real romantic feeling between the two on either person's part is debatable. We can talk about that next. But I'm curious what Mona has to say.
I don't think she believed him for 1 minute.
Okay.
I think that she was attracted to him, but I don't think she believed him for a second.
Okay. And that's fair. When Kashyyyk shows up, I saw your hand there, RM.
Yeah,
when Kashyyyk shows up, she says, "Meet me in my ready room. I know the way. You know the way." And then she leaves. And as she leaves, there's this sort of sideways, subtle glance from Chakotay to Janeway, and right there, you're like, they know something's up, right? And I think that's perfect because it sort of telegraphs quietly that Janeway and Chakotay, they're pretty smart cookies. They know something is not amiss here, right? So something's a mess. So it's interesting. Risa.
I'm sorry. Is it all right if I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go to Risa after that.
Okay. What I was going to say is what I actually like the most about the episode is that Janeway's the captain. So when she makes decisions, even on a personal level, she thinks about the entire crew. And so, although I'm not saying it doesn't look like she thought about the entire crew in this episode, but it did zero in a lot on a personal relationship, which was actually like their chess game, right? They're both playing this chess game against one another. But I also want to point out that I do want Janeway to be happy and have some romance, and it plays on you a little bit, the fantasy of what's happening, but at the same time, it's done so cleverly that in the end, we all know that from the very beginning, all she was thinking about was the safety. She was going to give up her life to save those telepaths. You know,
Sure.
this is the level of commitment that she has, but it's hard. It was hard to see it, and it was good that it was hard to see it because if it convinced us, well, of course we knew what was going to happen in the end, but I think if she could convince those guys who are so meticulous in the way that they're examining everything, if she could convince them, then we know she can handle anything, and I think it also sets a good example for the rest of the crew as well. I don't think they had any doubt in their mind that she was going to be charmed by this man. You know, they took it in stride. And that's the other thing too that I was going to say is that since the majority of the crew that we see are, you know, they all went to the academy, right? They've all trained for situations like this. I think that's very interesting too. They always had each other's back, no matter what, and they also were willing to give up their lives to save those telepaths as well. So it's a very interesting, you know, analysis of, you know, how things look on the surface, when in actuality, there's more going on behind the scenes. That's all I was going to say.
Oh yeah, totally. And I agree with you. It's nice to see Janeway finally get some romance in her life. And it's funny that you bring that point up specifically because this ranks as Kate Mulgrew's favorite episode of all of Voyager. And she had been sort of lobbying the producers for a long time to bring some sort of romantic relationship into Janeway's world. And she finally gets it in this episode. And this is more sort of a developmental piece for Janeway than it is anything else. And we learn a little bit about her. We learn a little bit about the way, you know, she expresses herself romantically and this and that. Kate Mulgrew has said, quote, "This was at long last a story about the woman under the scientist," unquote. And I think that is a great quote because yes, we see her being the captain. We see her, you know, sort of holding Kashyyyk off at a you know, arm's distance. But at the same time, she is starting to kind of let that side of her loose. And I would almost argue that she did have feelings for Kashyyyk because she did try to convince him at the very, very end after the deception was revealed. Hey, I wasn't lying. If you want to stay here, you know, you can stay here. So yeah.
I think because she hasn't had romance in so long, and at this point, did he break up with her, or they were still together?
Mark. We haven't found that out yet.
Okay. I'm sorry, but if the opportunity is there, she's gonna take it.
Maybe.
Even if it's for just 2 seconds. You
Maybe.
know, even if she knows for sure it's not going to work out because obviously she doesn't trust him and she knows who he is. But I mean, at the end, that kiss that he gave her and then she turned around and pushed him back and gave him a bigger one.
Yeah.
Why not?
Sure. I mean, maybe. I think at this point in the 5th season, she hasn't communicated with her fiance, Mark, yet, but she has been sort of resigned to the fact that she's been gone so long.
Yeah.
Mark probably moved on.
Yeah.
Let me go to Risa and then back to Denny because I saw your hand up was up a little earlier. So Risa.
Yeah, sorry, the thing keeps going off.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think she was very cautious, and when he came for asylum, I think she was very skeptical, and I'm wondering if maybe she went along with it for a while because he did keep coming up with information that was very valuable to them, and continued to prove her value. Like when she first, you know, admitted it that she had the refugees and everything, I was thinking, I don't know if this is going to be a good thing. But he did continue to prove that, you know, he gave them the residence of the shields and all these various things, making it look as if he really was, you know, on you wanting to defect and on her side and everything. But I'm wondering if down deep that she never did quite trust him, even at the end, you know, when, you know, they had that, you know, romance between them. Although poor Janeway, whenever she has any romance, it's always, of course, with somebody that, you know, is going to disappear, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But it was very, very brilliantly done. I think, but she's a smart cookie, and I think that she was playing him as well, even though. Anyway, yeah, very good.
I would tend to agree with you. And there's a subtle hint. I don't know if anybody caught it. There's a subtle hint that Janeway wasn't really buying this. She was playing along. She was waiting to see how it all played out. but she never really trusted him, and she never really accepted the story of him defecting and even him having feelings for her. And I'll tell you why. Long into the association where they're showing romantic feelings for each other or whatnot, when he defects, he says, I gave up the title of inspector. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm so tired of that. Just call me Kashyyyk. She continues to call him inspector the entire time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very subtle nod to she knows that he's there for a subterfuge. He's there for espionage. He's trying to trip her up, and she knows it.
Yes, but I think that I what if it's turn around? I think he really wanted to defect, and yes, but because he helped her. Hence the reason how the telepath left. And he knew how smart she was, mm-hmm. or she is. But he knew at the same time that I only have time. This is my only time that I can do this. And I don't think it's going to be able to be done at this time. Therefore, if I do this and I go all the way and it doesn't work, I'm going to be dead, because these guys, they're going to get me in. So I wonder if he actually caught on that and acted like strong and mean and tried to play with towards her, for his people, for his people to say, oh yeah, no, this was all a game. He was trying to, and save his life.
I think they knew that. I think they knew that it was a setup. I mean, Prax, at the very end, his counterpart, Prax, seemed to know that this was all a ploy from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, I think, I'm not positive on that, but Rita, I saw your hand. Let me get through the three that already are up, and then I'll come to you. Denny, go ahead.
Oh, it's me, Brenda. Hi.
Hi, me, Brenda.
I think Janeway is one of the greatest captains, and she always has the hope for the best but prepare for the worst attitude, which shows in this. The man was very charismatic and cute to boot, and so I meant she let herself relax, and maybe she was actually attracted to him, and so she let that part of herself go and follow what he was leading. But at the same time, she knew to prepare for the worst, and which, of course, it turned out to be the worst, and she was prepared. So that's why I always liked her as a captain.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that there was she let herself go. She let herself experience the emotion of the attraction or the romance. But I think in the bottom of her heart and in the back of her head, she always knew that it wasn't real. Yeah. And that's why we get to see this wonderful moment at the very end when Kashyyyk is sitting on the bridge and she to his left, and when Kashyyyk realizes that he's been had. Right, he's been fooled, and I think that's a really great moment.
Yes.
Trixie says they agree. That's their thought too. Hope for the best and prep for the worst is what any great leader does. That's true. That's true. Mona, go ahead.
I thought about what Lisa said before she said it, and that could very well be because he may have wanted to go along. He may have wanted to do the right thing, but he knew he'd be dead. Sure. I do believe that his men knew the game he was playing with Janeway, because that's why they left him alone there at the end with her in the office. Mm-hmm. But I also I think I'm right and Lisa's right. I think that they played each other, and in the end, she had to prepare for the worst, and so did he, because if he had turned his back on the rest of his people, he would have been dead. They would have found a way.
Sure.
So yeah, I know it's. I think it's both.
Yeah, and it could very well be both. I think he planned for the worst, but I think he was caught completely unaware by Janeway's deception at the end, just because of the way he reacted, and he got mad about it, and then realized he can't report back to his home base that he screwed up this bad. So he shoved it under the rug, and so he was completely taken unaware by that fact. Yeah.
Maybe that was an act.
You think that was an act?
That may have been an act because yeah, she surprised him at her ingenuity. She surprised him, maybe. But the thing about save our skin by not reporting it, that may have been an act because maybe he had a little bit of a change of heart. Well, shit, she won this. So I'm going to let her go. I just can't go with her.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I love that we can have these conversations together and have differing viewpoints that sort of overlap. It's like a Venn diagram of awesomeness, right? Yeah. I love it. All right, let me go to Rita because I saw your hand physically, and then I'll go to Bess. Rita, go ahead.
Yes. I was going to say what was also kind of interesting about this episode is that when the episode starts and these guys are on board the ship doing their inspections, for the most part, the majority of the crew has a very stoic look on their face. They're at attention. And of course, Tuvok is always going to look at attention, and so is Seven of Nine. Like, they're not smiling. They don't have the smile on. But I noticed that at the very beginning of the episode, when they get to Janeway and she's listening to music, she's actually smiling, and I thought that was very interesting because it's meant to off-put them as they're doing this inspection, and that automatically sets the tone for us because we know what a professional she is. We know her integrity. We know all of this already about the way it would be in a normal situation. And in an inspection where essentially if they fail this inspection, everybody's going to be, let's say, hypothetically killed or whatever they plan on doing with the crew, she has her charm on. So I thought that was very interesting. And immediately when I saw that at the beginning, I thought this is very interesting because she's actually behaving charming. She talked about the music. She says, oh, yes, it certainly has a different tone. And it's one of my favorites. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. Are they inspecting our music? Or, she's putting the charm on from the very beginning. And, I think that she had thought about tactics. You all had mentioned, she's expecting the worst and hoping for the best. She must have thought about different tactics of how to deal with maybe this group of people or her that, it's like you have to have a certain type of correspondence with them. But I think she put off that message. Maybe she had a sense that that man kind of liked her. I don't know. But sometimes, like when you see someone you think that they might like you, you might change the way that you behave around them. And it could have offset him thinking that he could charm her at that point. Him not realizing that, that's she is behaving charmingly, but there's much more to that charm than what he can see on the surface.
So you're saying that it was a power play on Janeway's part from the very beginning.
Yes.
Where she goes in and she's charming and she's laying it on, sort of letting Kashyyyk know that he has an opening if he can't get what he wants by direct means. Okay, that's fair. I do think I love the fact that you're talking about the music, because there's a very pivotal moment on the bridge right at the end, right before Janeway's deception is revealed, where she says, "Computer, change the music." Because up until that point, Kashyyyk was in charge. He was totally in charge of the ship. He could have executed all of them if he wanted to, arrested them all if he wanted to, and the music was sort of a symbol of his control over the ship, right? We're going to listen to this music because I like it. Janeway at the very end says, change the music. And that was her way of saying, you're not in charge anymore. We got you. And I like that. It was very like smart.
Good point.
Bess and then Mona for the last thought of the day. Bess.
Hi everyone. I also really love that moment with the music. And that's I love this conversation. This one's complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I agree with everybody. But I might disagree a little bit. I don't know, but I feel like two things. One, Janeway definitely planned, never fully trusted him. And so she had her plan, her counter plan in place. You know, he didn't have free reign of the ship from the beginning. She was clear with him up front that she wasn't sure she trusted him, and so he was going to be under guard at all times and all that. But what it looks like she's trusting him a lot because they're working the problem together, right?
Sure.
And then when they kind of figure out the key, they don't find the location, but they have sort of the algorithmic key that helps them find out the location, I think is what we see there.
Right.
And the dynamic between them is very interesting. And for me, it's sort of like game recognizing game. She's sort of like two can play this game, you know. He's giving like this sort of charming energy. She's giving it back. But what I do think though is that she was genuinely attracted to him and he was genuinely attracted to her. I think they kind of saw a little bit of similarity in each other. The fact that they could match each other note for note with that whole thing he was doing, and that she could give it back as good as she got. And I think that kiss before he leaves was genuine on both their parts, and I think it was a moment when they actually both let their guard down for a second and gave in to the genuine feeling behind all of the persona that they'd both been wearing. And I love the way it unfolds when he comes back again, pretending to be the bad guy, pretending to be the good guy, right? He's like the mole at this point, and she's still playing along. And she walks in and he sends Prax away and she's like, okay, so blah, blah, blah. And she tells him everything. She's confiding in him, making him think that he can totally be trusted, but she's already had her plan. The minute she left, they sent the telepaths on their way to the real wormhole. So all of this now is just buying time.
Exactly. She was taking him aside, buying some time for them to leave.
All this like person, you know, all this conversation back and forth, all of this flirting, all of this whispering and co-conspirators and all of that's just buying time. They're already halfway to the wormhole. The real wormhole, she's already set up the false sensors so that, you know, they'll reach for the wrong thing. And I love, but when he immediately goes, Prax, go down to the cargo bay 2 and turn on the transporter, you know, her face drops. She does the whole thing. She shows the disappointment. And I think it's mostly a performance, but I think it's a little bit real, is my working theory. And she says, and then when there's nothing but vegetables and he realizes they're false readings. And then she says, computer, play Mahler's Second Symphony. You know, she changes the music. You know, she's, you know, enjoying it a little and giving it back to him as good as she got. But there's that moment at the end when she says, you know, I meant everything I said.
Mm.
And I would have gone through with it if only you had kept your side of the bargain.
Sure.
And then he says something similar to her. And so for me, that's kind of that moment when they're like,
Well
you know,
played.
I really did like you,
Mhm.
but I couldn't trust you. And if you had proved to be trustworthy, you know, things might be different right now, you know? And I just thought that was really interesting. And then, like, the really big moment for me is after everybody's gone and she's totally won, instead of sitting there and feeling very victorious, she looks devastated.
Yeah.
He genuinely looks devastated. And I think it's because she caught some real feelings. And now she has
Sure.
to suck it all back in
Yeah.
and with the price that she's chosen to pay in order to be the captain while they're stranded in the Delta Quadrant. So it's epic. It's an epic episode. It's very fun to watch.
It's all great points on your part, and I think you hit something early on when you were talking about Janeway being able to allow herself to feel the feelings or the relationship that was sort of kind of developing with Kashyyyk. Uh, for the first time in 5 seasons, Janeway meets what is arguably her equal, right? Somebody as strong as her that she has a kinship with, and maybe she doesn't trust him, but the attraction is there, and so therefore she, she doesn't have to delete the wife, or whatever. So she naturally feels drawn to this because she's a strong leader, and so is he, and so. But I think that up until the point where she changes the music at the end, everything was pretense for her part, right? She knew there was deception. She knew there was something, amiss, and she really was just playing this game in a brilliant way to deceive Kashyyyk, and it worked. Good
I think
points.
Beautiful ballet.
I think she definitely played him, but I think all the like strategically, I think she knew that there was a very good chance she couldn't trust him, and so she had her whole plan in place. But I also think she caught real feelings. And I
Yeah, I
think
think
both of those
helping
two
her.
things happened together. And I think it surprised both of them that their persona that they were doing with each other turned a little bit real. Um, but it didn't change either of them from their course. It didn't make him change who he was, and it didn't make her trust him anymore. Just because she liked him didn't mean she trusted him 1 ounce more than her strategic mind told her she shouldn't. And that's part of what I think is so interesting about it is that it's complicated.
It's one of the reasons I love this episode. We all know that love, true love, is complicated sometimes, and we see that sort of developing, whether or not again, whether or not that affection is real or not in this episode. But it appears to genuinely be real, and that the both of them have these feelings or attraction. But this episode is more than just the emotion or the romance. It's this subtle subterfuge on both parts. I love this. It was so brilliantly well done. Mona, for the last thought of the day.
Okay, well, I apologize for missing some of the middle, and I haven't watched this episode in maybe 2 years. So, were the Devore there searching for those refugees, or that's what I thought? Because they didn't want them, they wanted to get rid of them. I thought that but I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. So.
Yeah, that was the whole point of the inspection teams. Anytime they have ships passing through Devore space, they stop and inspect to make sure there's no telepaths, which I guess
that's what I thought.
Them,
and it's a good thing that Tess was not on board.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Although presumably she would be put in the transporter buffer like everybody else, but at the same time, it's a good thing, because we still had Tuvok, we still had Vorik.
And she could destroy them too.
Yes, when she finally gets full control of her powers, she could totally destroy the Devore, which would sort of nullify the whole point of the story anyways. Awesome. Great discussion and a great episode. And I love that we can have these conversations and enjoy Star Trek together. That's about all the time we have for this session. We do have one more event this evening, and I'm really hoping that you folks will join us for that as well. It is our first live Q&A of Voyager 30 about the Voyager documentary To the Journey, which is being produced and forthcoming this year, hopefully. We're going to have the producer and both co-directors on to talk to us about the production. They also have some behind the scenes, not behind the scenes, but sneak peeks at the documentary to share with us. So hope you'll join us. That's at 7:00 p.m. on the East Coast, 4:00 on the West Coast. And you can use the same link that you use to get into this Zoom will work for that Zoom as well. So I hope you'll join us at 7:00. Thank you all so much for coming. Live long and prosper. Thanks for being members of the Star Trek family, and have a nice evening if we don't see you tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You're
everyone.
welcome.
Bye.